Good. Let me please start. And good evening, everyone. I warmly welcome you at today's workshop, and where you will learn how to become the business angel and how to start your path as the angel investor. And we have today our keynote speaker, Petr Skrla. Petr is an angel investor and entrepreneur, having many years of experience working with startups, investing in startups. And I hope Petr will share a lot of interesting advices, a lot of knowledge sharing with you today. And hopefully, Petr, you will uncover some secrets and some insights of the business angels environment. So I hope the event will be super interesting and useful for you, and enjoy it. After the presentation by Petr, we have an option to organize a Q&A session. So you can ask questions directly from Zoom chat or using an option of slido.com. Just put in your browser slido.com and a code number that you can see now on the presentation screen, and I will put it later to the chat as well. And before we start, I would like to introduce myself. I would like to introduce the organization that hosts today's workshop. I'm Katrina from DAX Innovation Center. We are based in the Czech Republic. And we have a mission. We work every day to improve society through digital innovation and research. And we do this by taking part in multiple initiatives and programs, by boosting startup ecosystem in the Czech Republic and also in Central Europe. We constantly seek for innovations, and we focus on some core pillars such as smart health, smart transport, smart energy. But of course, we also offer a lot to startups that have other profiles. So we help in general to boost this startup ecosystem. These are just some core activities that we do. We build, we fundraise, we co-create. We have more than 70 mentors in our mentor pool, more than 80 alumni startups, which could raise around 6 million euros in investments. Within 9 years, we were able to fundraise 28 million euros for 14 large-scale international projects. And as I mentioned, we love innovations, and we help to co-create the products. We have our own Pub Lab where all the magic happens. So we are happy to assist the early stage teams which work on their products creation. In the bottom, you can see some names of our alumni startups, which became quite famous, quite successful on the startup market. And just to mention by what means we do this, we help to raise awareness about startup ecosystem. We organize innovation days. We take part in Startup Europe Week. We organize events such as today, morning health talks, and many other initiatives. We also help teams to identify their path, to validate their ideas, to find some skills that they miss to complete the team. And we run our accelerator program. We help teams from abroad to launch their ideas, to launch their startups in the Czech Republic as well. And DAX IC is proud to be a hub for EIT Health and EIT in energy thematic fields. So we kind of experts in these two fields, promoted by European Institute of Innovation and Technology. Just to give you an example of the project that we are currently working on, this is an international project, Sea Connector, which helps to build bridges for early stage investments, where we, DAX IC, together with 5 other countries, 5 other actors, we help to fill the gap in investments within this mentioned regions. And we all share the mission linking early stage startups with private investors and public funds. And we do this by facilitating angel co-investment funds, private investors and public support to join, to cooperate in the opportunity to invest in startups. And in case you are the early stage startup, you represent the early stage startup seeking investment, or you are the business angel, you would like to get an access to really promising great startups, you're seeking to the opportunity to invest, we welcome you to cooperate with us. We invite you to reach out to us. You could reach out to me or to my colleagues, Evgeny or Michael, to get more information. So we will be happy to assist to your needs. Also, you can reach the C-Connector webpage and get more information about the project from our webpage. And please follow us, stay tuned. We have a lot of plans, a lot of initiatives, a lot of programs we can offer you, and we just happy to have you in our network and to see you at our events. And I don't want to make you wait any longer, because we all are gathered here to hear our keynote speaker for today, Petr Skrla, angel investor. And Petr, I give the floor to you. Please feel free to present, and meanwhile you start sharing your screen. I just want to remind that after Petr's presentation, we will have room for questions to Petr. So please feel free to use chat and Zoom or slido.com option, where you can also ask anonymously, and you can vote for the question you like and you would like to hear the response on it first. So please use slido.com and the code that is now in your Zoom chat. And Petr, please just let me know when you're ready to start.
Okay. Katerina is so generous, I almost feel like a movie star. Katerina, can I ask you to share my presentation?
Yes, sure, of course. Yes.
I'm sort of old school, so I have printed out in front of me. First of all, thank you, Katerina, for preparing the slides. We sat down together and I wrote out a very, how should I say, a very rough outline of what I thought would be interesting to hear. And Katerina was able to create magic out of it and actually put structure into it. So thank you very much, Katerina. I'm sure it wouldn't have happened without your input. The second point that I want to say right at the beginning is, I was looking at the presentation this morning and I thought, you know, that's a really stupid title that I chose, How to Become a Business Angel. It's a little bit like becoming a parent. You suddenly realize that you are when you're in the middle of the thick of things. And I'm not sure that you can actually, that there's a path to become a business angel, because you really need a lot of factors. You need money, you need time, you need to have a little bit of missionary spirit or some pro bono thinking in your head. You need to be able to like helping people, and you need to have a lot of patience and a lot of other factors. So when all these things sort of come together, it's kind of hard to plan a career to become a business angel. You know, some people will be consultants a long time, they'll gather a lot of experience, they'll make a little bit of money on the way, and then they'll want to become business angels. That's one possible route. Another possible route is, you know, you've had your business, you've sold your business, you think that, you know, there is everything to know about business, and you're full of this goodwill, and you want everyone else to be as successful as you were. And there's 100 paths in between these two extremes, maybe, in terms of becoming or gathering or being able to pull together the skill set and the other factors that you need to really become a business angel. People that know me know that I'm very pragmatic. So the first, Katerina, next slide. So the first slide I chose is to talk about what kind of returns are we expecting. If you're doing only pro bono work, then you're not really a business angel. It's a hobby. And as everyone knows, you usually pay for your hobbies and you don't expect a return. If you're a business angel, then it implies that you're doing this for business reasons. It doesn't mean that you have to be as sharp as Rockefeller, but it still means you're doing it for business. And it's important to understand that what are the statistics in this business, right? So very roughly, these are numbers from the top of my head from reading various reports. If you find numbers that are more precise, I'd be very happy to receive them from you. But roughly out of 10 investments, only one will be a home run. All right. So if you invest in 2 or 3 startups as a business angel investor, expect statistically to lose all your money. One is a home run, 3 will return 1 to 5 times your investment, and the other half, 5 to 6, will basically fail. All right. This is really important because if you're really planning seriously on becoming a business angel, it means that you have to do a little bit of portfolio planning. And what it means is that you're unlikely to make 10 investments in 1 year, right? So you got to think about how much money do I want to put in, you know, how long do I want to do this before I build up my portfolio? And it's really important to understand that you shouldn't expect to earn more than what the statistics say. And these are US statistics. These are not European statistics. I am sure the European statistics are even worse than what you have here. So in the US, 217, you know, this is what I remember reading 5 years ago, 17% was the average business angel investor return per annum. Oh, that's pretty sexy. Better than Bitcoin right now, better than the stock market, but still, you know, a lot of stress, a lot of risk. As the startup market has developed and become more competitive, then okay. Am I back online, Katerina? Okay. As you would expect, with increasing demand from the side of investors, you have average returns falling. So now in the US, it's roughly 12% is the average return for a business angel investor. Not very exciting. So you got to think hard if this is really where you want to spend your time and money. There's other ways to probably make more money. I doubt there's more exciting ways to make more money, but unless you're doing drugs. But I'm sure that business angel investing is among the top personal rewarding activities. Okay, so that's just to be very clear about what kind of returns we're expecting. Next slide. So if you're going to decide to try this thing called being a business angel, then there's 6 points here that are pretty key. First of all is I'd advise, my advice is target at least 10 startups. If you're not doing 10 startups, you're not respecting, what the market really is about. And of course, every investor, including myself, thinks that they're smarter than the market. That's absolutely natural. I think that all my startups are going to be home runs. I don't think any one of them is going to fail, right? I mean, I'm sure you think this too. But, at the end of the day, try and keep in the back of your mind the data on about 80,000 business angel investors means 1 in 10 fail. So plan to do 10 startups at least, and probably do it over 3 years. Don't try and do it all in 1 year. And if you only do 1 per year, you probably aren't going to get that kind of a real emotional, excitement going within you. The second thing is when you want to invest in one startup, in reality, you need to be able to negotiate, be in the final negotiation stage with, not final, but be in serious negotiations between 5 and 10 startups before you choose one of them. Eventually they're not going to like you, or you're not going to like them, or the deal's going to fall apart because of the nitty-gritty terms, or something else happens that, they decide to take a different investor. So to make one good quality investment, plan to be in the final stages with 5 to 10. To select one startup, that you want to really invest into, you've got to see at least 25, and that's from, 50 plus raw deal flows. So turning that into time, what it means is that, looking at pre-selection, it takes me 10 to 60 minutes to do a pre-selection. When I've selected a deal that I like on the surface, it probably takes me 10 hours to research. That means talking to friends, finding other people that know about the sector, reading up on Google, on the sector, trying to find out other information. So I spent at least 10 hours looking at my selection, and then that gets me to the 5 to 10 that I actually then close on. And closing probably takes you, if you're very good, 50 hours, right? If you have some doubts and you do a lot of research, or you have other angel investors with you, and especially if you have an institutional investor with you, then you're going to be looking at much more. So when I look at all that time, then it roughly works out to 160 hours, which if you take an 8-hour working day, it means that you're roughly looking at 20 days per quarter if you make one investment per quarter, or if you make one investment in 4 months. So you're roughly working 1 month out of 4 months to full time just to make one investment. All right, so that gives you a good idea about your time commitment before you sort of jump into being a business angel. All right, next slide. So let's stop just for a little bit about what is a business angel, and this is a little bit philosophical. So I looked at the etiology of the name. Okay, business angel. So angel, okay, what is it? Altruistic, magical being with unlimited power, depending on your worldview, which is a slightly euphemistic expression for those of us who are business angels. And then I was a little bit, what's the word? Cynical about the use of the word business. Now, on the one side, it's an adjective, but on the other side, there's actually a reasonable amount of business angels that are looking at being angels purely for business. So it's more predatory, and that's definitely not what we're talking about when we're doing when we're talking about becoming a business angel. So when you look at these two words, then really it kind of nicely encases what being a business angel is. And I was thinking about it a little bit during the week, and it's a little bit like, and maybe the parallel isn't perfect, of course not, but it's a little bit like being a parent, because you have an incredible wealth of knowledge. You have your startup. You're really keen that the startup benefits as much as possible from your wealth of knowledge. But at the same time, it's not your company, it's not your life. There's founders, they have clear ideas most time, hopefully. They have direction, they have energy, and you want to build their independence, because as a business angel, the worst thing you can do is undermine their own confidence in their own ability to make a good decision. So and it's like a psychologist, psychologist has to avoid building client dependency, and you don't want, even though it might, might boost your ego, you don't want your startup or the startup that you've invested in to always call you and say, hey, Ben, what do you think of this idea? Or Ben, what do you think of this strategy? Or what do you think of this idea? Obviously, you love to comment because you're super intelligent and super experienced, right? But at the end of the day, you're really building a dependence on you, and that's never good, right? So that's sort of my view of what being a business angel really is about. It's not only altruistic, but there's a large portion of, you're out there, you've got some experience, you want to share it, and that's obvious. But at the same time, you've got to learn to communicate the right things the right way, and not build a dependence on you on the part of the founders or the key operators. Okay, next slide. So I was thinking, what do I need to consider when I want to become a business angel? And these are sort of things that I've been thinking about, and maybe in the discussion you can add to them. And there's sort of 6 things that I identified, a little bit more, but then I sort of culled it down to 6 key things: motivation, money, time, heart, segment knowledge, and risk reward profile. And on the next slide, we'll dive into some of these points. Okay, we can skip that. Sorry. So, just a sec here. Okay, in a way, this is a recap of what I said earlier. So, where do I want to invest my money? Point number one, why do I want to share my experiences? Another motivation is I want to share in the excitement, and that's the hard part. For me, one of my key motivations in becoming a business angel is to learn something new. Obviously, nowadays, startups is sexy, modern. If you're an angel investor, people think you're cool. So that might be another motivation, which hopefully is not your only motivation. You might have an altruistic reason just to help grow young companies. And also related to point E, there's a certain ego status element that some people find in being a business angel. But let's jump to the next slide, because those are the practical things. So first of all, how much money do you want to put into the investment? All right. If you look at that now, the average angel investment size is between 100,000 to 300,000 euros, right? You're probably going to have a reasonable amount of money to be a lead angel or the only angel in startups, right? So if you look at deal sizes that are 100,000 euros, you got to have €1 million in your back pocket that you're willing to risk and lose across 10 companies. That gives you 100,000 each. Or, how much money you have to spend really will define to a very high degree whether you're looking for club deals. And this is exactly where Dex Connector comes in, because Dex Connector connects angel investors that want to put in smaller amounts of money, and you can club together and do deals. But if you have €1 million that you can put in to angel investing, then you can basically do things by yourself. And obviously, there's a lot of things that are much easier when you're an angel investor and you run by yourself. So how much money you have, absolutely your number one and key consideration. How much time? Like I said before, hobby versus work. If you're taking this as a hobby, expect to pay for it. If you're going to do it seriously, then you can expect it to earn you some money. Be very systematic. My other job, in a quote unquote, is real estate investing. And with my wife, we're extremely systematic in terms of the ads we review, the network we have, and occasionally when we find a great apartment that we buy or another property that we redevelop, people tell us, wow, you guys are so lucky to find these good acquisitions. It's not luck at all. It's just we're in the market, we're out there looking, we're spending systematic time looking for the good deals. And when the good deals come, we're ready with a pile of cash. We put it on the table, we close the deal. So, if you're not going to be systematic about buying an apartment, don't expect to find a good deal. And depending on how much time you have, figure out where does your value added come in. All right, and we'll come to that in a few other slides. The third consideration is how much heart do you want to put in. I always say, the business is a lot about emotion. You don't do something very successful, be it if you're a gold medal winner, or you're a sports team, or you win a war, or you do something else. Typically, you need emotion, and you got to decide if you're willing to risk a lot of invested emotion in your startups. All right. So too much emotion is bad. That's clear. It impacts your decision making and gets you too involved. But obviously, unless you're willing to really get involved and commit and believe and fight for your investment, then you're unlikely to be as successful as you might otherwise be. All right. Finally, on the emotional side, there's emotion versus committed. You know, some people get really excited, and I've seen this with some of my colleagues, really excited about a startup. You know, they tell all their friends how fantastic this investment is, how they're going to make a lot of money, how the team is absolutely genius. And then the first problem comes along, and what happens? Boom. These guys told me false information. You know, they ripped me off. You know, blah blah blah. It's hard enough time running a company without having to go through an emotional roller coaster on the part of your investors. So if you're going to make an angel investment, please be involved, but be totally supportive and understand that you're going to go through cycles. It's going to go up and down. My experience is that it takes roughly seven roadblocks or 7 mini failures before a startup really finds its way on the path that will be really successful. All right. So put your heart in, but be aware, or consideration, be aware that you've got to be very mature. It's sort of like in a relationship, you know, everyone hates a partner that sort of, you know, it's this typical Italian story, right? Something small happens and suddenly you're in a crisis, and then it's super fantastically, you know, warm, and then there's a little crisis, and again it's overblown, etc. Right. Okay, next slide. All right, so another consideration is, and this is really diverse, you know, what is your knowledge base, and do you want to focus on a particular segment? And I'll give that as an example for myself. I'm not an IT person. When I was at school, then I did some programming and I understand the basics of IT, but I'm definitely not one of these modern day geniuses that do fintech and blockchain and cryptocurrencies and understand how all this works together, you know, payment gateways, etc. Fundamentally, yes, but it's not a business that I understand. And partly because of that, I don't invest in fintech. I know there's a lot of money to be made in fintech, but my personal philosophy is I invest in companies where I think I can have added value, all right? But that's not necessarily important. For example, a lot of clubs will club together and there'll be, let's say, 10 guys in the club or gals, and one of them will be a fintech expert, and they'll say, Harry, you're our fintech expert. What do you think? And Harry will say, this is super. And they'll all say, okay, we're each putting in 15,000 euros, and it's a great deal, right? And again, this is one of the benefits of Dex Connector or Keiretsu or some of the other investment clubs, that that you can find people that complement your skill set. Personally, I like to get involved a little bit more than usual in my startups, and I find opportunities to do that. So if I see that a startup, they've got a complete team, they're not really missing any key competencies, or they're not looking really for any outside key competencies, that's very cool. Sometimes I'll consider making an investment as well, but in general, I find it lots of fun and very satisfying to be involved with the company and being an active participant. So again, you know, choose or really think hard about if you want to focus on a segment, or or if you want to, you know, take a very broad look on the market. If you're going to be doing this alone, if you're going to be doing this with a group of people, all this will help you to decide how to set up your sort of business angel ecosystem, which will make you then wildly more successful in what you're trying to achieve. Finally, think very hard about your risk reward profile. So, you know, fundamentally, business angel investing is a risky business. And think about how much money you want to put in versus at what stage you're investing. So obviously, the earlier you invest, the lower the valuation, the more your money will get you a higher equity percentage, but it comes at the price of a higher risk investment. Later stage, you might choose, say, okay, I actually, the early stage, super early stage, too risky for me. I'm willing to come in when a company has a valuation of €1 million or 5 million euros. I'm happy taking only 0.5% maybe, or 1%, and that's cool, right? Or you might say, you know, I'm a real player. I love poker. You know, I believe I can evaluate companies well, and I'm willing to go in very early, and I'm willing to invest. And for my money, I don't want 1%. I want 3% or 4% or whatever it is you negotiate. Think very hard about your risk reward profile and the stage at which you want to invest, because again, it'll save you a ton of time, and it'll save you it'll just save you a lot of time. You know, if you're willing to go high risk, look at very early stage and help the company grow. Looking at low risk, go for later stage and be happy with a smaller percentage. Okay, what next do we have on the slides? So some of this is pretty clear. How to invest, valuation, shareholding, structures, roles, and rights. Obviously, on any one of these points, you could have a separate presentation. Books have been written about them. I just want to highlight a few things. So valuations have kind of, in my mind, gone a little bit crazy. I've been seeing more and more investment proposals where young people have come to me. They said, we have this idea. This is how we think we should do it. And we're looking for 400,000 euro to do a design concept or to do the software. All right. And we think the company is worth 5 million euros or 3 million euros. We're offering 10% of the company. I just think that that's plain crazy. I mean, people that have not really put in any of their own money, are using your angel money to create a concept that they haven't had any rational way to prove to you. I think is just crazy. But there's unfortunately a lot of money, so you know, eventually they'll find someone that they can convince. Valuation will be a big key thing. I typically don't invest in companies that have an internal valuation over 1 million euros, because I'm an early stage investor, very early stage investor. Although I have done an investment in one company where I took a valuation of almost 4 million euros, and I'm quite pleased with the setup I have, and I think it's going to be successful, of course. But you know, sort of choose your valuation threshold roughly, so that you target the kind of companies that you like to invest in. Again, if you're targeting higher valuations, typically the concepts will be well developed. The minimum viable product will have been absolutely proven. Some commercial traction will be presentable. Your first paying customers should be there. If you're willing to take high risk, don't expect to see customers. Don't expect to even see a minimum viable product. Expect to work with the team to develop the strategy, the product, etc. On shareholding, there's been a lot written about, you know, the fact that angel investors shouldn't take more than 5 or 10%. And a lot of the logic is valid. And this is now I'm going to be speaking, you know, as an angel investor. But I don't think the logic has to always be true, because in one company I have 20% as an angel investor. In one company I have 67% as an angel investor. In another company I have, I think it's 4% as an angel investor. So that gives you a nice overview that there doesn't have to be any, you know, fixed rules as to what percentage the investor as an angel investor takes. What's more important is what kind of future funding do you expect, which is obvious, and what kind of value do you expect to contribute to the company. And one of the things that I think is really important, that I like to work with the team, I say, okay, let's agree on the following. If you see that I bring a huge amount of value to making us successful, bringing in early customers, bringing in the right designers, working out the right product concept, then let's agree on some kind of valuation range, which will make me a really interested angel investor and really makes me part of the team. On the other side, I don't want the equity up front. And I say, and if things don't work out, it's very cool. What's interesting is with one of my investments, I agreed on a 3% sort of bonus equity portion on a whole bunch of soft deliverables, right? And they're a young team, they're very clever. And I could see that they were kind of skeptical. I said, hey, no pressure. And we agreed on some milestones. 2 years down the road, or 18 months, we're talking about the vesting period. And we came to a point where I said, okay, we're 18 months down the road. What do you think about me hitting the milestones? And I knew that I had not hit a single milestone of what we had agreed 18 months ago. All right, but we were having regular meetings, and from my opinion, there was total value being added, but in completely different areas. And what was really nice, and that's why I think these guys are intelligent. They came back and they said, Peter, we looked at the milestones. You haven't hit any of them because it was reporting and some other whole bunch of stuff. But to our surprise, because we were skeptical at the beginning, we really have to confess that there's been a lot of added value in a whole bunch of other different areas. And with the partners, we agree that we will grant you the full 3% early without having met any of the other milestones, right? And so, and it's kind of nice when you work with a team that recognizes the added value that you have for them. And as an angel investor, my advice is, if you think you can really add fundamental value, don't be shy to ask for more equity, but do it up front and define the areas where you think you can add that value. In a way, if the team doesn't recognize your ability to add value, then it either means that you're not doing a good enough job selling yourself, or you're not convincing them, and then you need to think, about what you're offering, or the team is arrogant. And both are interesting sort of considerations to think about. So let's move on to structures a little bit. My preference is my preference is to take straight equity, right? There's a lot of investment funds and there's a lot of investors that get really tricky and they say, well, if you don't hit these milestones and I get some extra equity, and if you guys don't perform like this, and if you don't enter this market by this time, that's really not being an angel investor in my mind. It's sort of like saying, you meet this pretty girl and you say, okay, I'm going to marry you, but you've got to stay under 50 kilograms. You got to make sure that you're earning at least $100,000 a year, and I don't know what else. All right, it's like, it's not being a real partner. With one of my investments, recently, we ran out of money, or we knew that we were going to run out of money before we hit a really key milestone in Germany. And I told them, look, guys, don't sweat it. I'll put in more money. Speak to our second major partner who put in much more than I did. I'll support you. Let's put in more money. Yeah, sorry, we'll keep the same valuation for now. But that will let you run another 12 months, hit your German milestone. And when you hit your German milestone, then we'll do the next fundraising round for 3 million euro, because that will allow you to raise the money that you need, and we'll all have to give up much less equity. All right. In my mind, that's being a real partner. It wasn't as easy to convince our other partner about that, but eventually he came on board, and it's going to be a good story. And I think it was the right thing to do, right? Instead of saying, hey, you guys haven't hit your milestone, we want to take more equity now, we want a lower valuation, blah, blah, blah. So I like to take just straight equity, not get tricky. And at the end of the day, you got to trust your partner, the management team, that they're good guys, that they're doing what's right, that they're able to listen to your advice, and that they're gonna, do the right thing. Alternatively, with one of my startups, we now had a situation where we needed money, and I knew it was too early to establish a new valuation round. So what I did was I raised 100,000 euros with a few of my friends, and I just gave them a convertible note, and I said, guys, give me the money, trust my face, and we'll convert your loan into equity at a 30% discount to any future valuation that we raise within the next 18 months, right? So really easy. The contract literally is on one piece of paper. We didn't waste any time with lawyers. I basically wrote it up myself. My lawyer looked at it really quick and he said, yeah, this is okay. He fixed a whole bunch of small things, but in principle, it was doable. I think that's useful as a sort of quick top-up approach, but as an angel investor, you're sending a clear message to the team. If you're in there, right next to them, no special rights. That's my opinion. Okay, so roles, I talked about that quite a bit. You need to define what role you're comfortable in, but probably a lot of you have come out of that. You built one successful business, you've sold it, you think you're golden, you're the next thing next to Bill Gates, and you've been the CEO and you've been the decision maker, and it's going to be very difficult for you to suddenly become a mentor and someone that's supporting the team. All right, this is something you got to really think hard about. What is your role as business angel? And it's what we discussed earlier. Don't build dependency. You're not leading the company, you're not guiding the company. You're there to be available, you're there to offer advice. My ex-wife says that I'm an expert in unsolicited advice. I try to keep that down nowadays. All right, so think very hard about your role, and think very hard about what kind of roles your partner wants you to play. I'd say spend a lot of time discussing roles. Okay, and then rights, we talked about that a little bit, and that gets a little bit more into legal stuff. Maybe we can come back to that in the Q&A. Right. So I think next slide. What are the next steps? If you're a true, if truly you want to become a business angel and you think you have all the stuff, money, experience, an altruistic spirit in you, then it's pretty easy actually, because there's so many business angel network clubs that you can join. Join, if you're here in the Czech Republic, join the Czech Business Angel Association. We just set it up not long ago. We're trying to cultivate the business angel environment. We're lobbying or working with the government to change 2 key laws, which will make startups much easier to become successful, and also to create a tax incentive for business angels to invest more money. Then my recommendation is join these clubs and make a commitment not to invest in the first 6 months. Just sit and learn. For me, I spent 2 years just learning before I made my first investment. All right, literally 2 years. It wasn't the only thing I did, obviously, but I was absolutely in no rush to make any investments. And then think a lot about setting up the right structure for yourself: time, money, legal structure. If you're going to be the lead investor, if you're only going to be a follow-on investor, what kind of co-business angel investors do I want to invest with? What kind of legal structures do I want to invest in? Do I want to hold my shares directly, or am I happy clubbing together and investing through a vehicle? The whole bunch of questions that you should clarify for yourself. So then when the investment comes, just like my wife and I are ready with the package of cash, when we see something that we want, then you also are ready, and you don't negotiate and figure things out for 6 months, and then the deal runs away from you. And I think that's really it. Yeah, that's it. There's some future topics, but those are just sort of ideas for potential follow-on discussions. Okay. Can we put up the chat, or I can probably look at the chat questions here.
Yes, Petr, thank you. And I also got a question to private direct messages. So let me maybe cover it, read it for you.
Okay.
So I have a question from Amber. Amber sent it to me directly. Are there key evaluation metrics that an angel investor should be on the lookout for?
You know, there's books written about valuation approaches. What I like to, I use common sense. I mean, if some guys come to me and say, we have this idea and our company is worth, you know, €1 million, it's just like, you know, guys, the ideas that you're coming to me with, I have 2 a week. I mean, there's no brilliancy in fresh ideas, and there's no shortage of fresh ideas. What's really key and what's really valuable is the ability to turn an idea into a sellable product. That's where the magic is. And that's what the team has to demonstrate to you. People that can talk and people that can talk about vision, you know, they're, as they say in the US, they're a dime a dozen. I mean, it always amazes me on LinkedIn how many people that are 25 have the name visionary and mentor. I mean, really, guys, at 25, you know nothing about business and life, you know? It's like, there's no way you can be a visionary at 25, you know, unless you're a super genius. Okay, there's a few of them. Turner being maybe one of them, right? Not Trump, Turner, right? Who invented the Turing machine. So, you know, do your common sense check, right? Are they able to really, you know, do the magic, turn it into a sellable product? Are they humble enough to understand that, you know, today's valuation has to reflect the reality of where you are? For me, an absolutely perfect antidote to startup excitement is real estate investing, right? I recently sold an apartment here in Vinohrady that I had held for 15 years, and my average rate of return was 17.3% every year. That was my capital gains plus the rental income that I had over that period. You know, and I look at my real estate investments, which are like probably one of the most risk-free investments you can make, and I compare it to the startup, and I say, am I going to make on a risk-adjusted level more money with this startup or not? And it's a great antidote to excitement, right? So that's sort of one theme. The second theme, obviously, is potential and work. Sometimes I'll see stuff that I know actually will not take much work to make successful, and other times I see stuff that is going to take incredible amount of work. That's why when 4 guys that are from Cheve Ute came to me with an idea that they've been working on as part of the research project, and they said they'd like to commercialize it, I said, guys, you know, I like you, I want to help you. This is my missionary spirit talking now. But you know, really, I'm going to be a co-founder, if not really the founder, because there's so much lacking in the story that you're telling that it's going to take a lot of energy on my part. And I took 65% in the company, and they're very pleased with the way things have been turning out, right? So it's not like, you know, I was out there, but it's an unusual case, right? It's more like the story I'm telling you now, and I can tell you the names of some of these companies, but it's more, part of my activities are more like a startup studio than a true business angel, all right? And a startup studio, just for those of you that haven't heard the term or aren't familiar with it, the startup studio will be guys like myself that have a reasonable amount of business experience. They love growing companies, and they'll find people that have good ideas or good concepts or good prototypes, but don't have a complete team. And they'll come to you and they'll say, look, we have this idea, we've come this far, we don't know how to go further. We're really looking for a partner to found a company that will then fully commercialize it. So that's more like a startup studio. And I kind of work in both spaces, business as a business angel and as a startup studio. So that's kind of a long-winded answer. I'm sorry. I'm sure I could have said that in fewer words.
That's great. That's all interesting to hear. And we have a great question from Marta. What inspired you to become a business angel? That's really interesting to know.
Yeah, it's, my background is I started out in Price Waterhouse on the financial consulting side. Then I had my own consulting company for 7 years doing financial restructuring and large privatization financing. Then I got tired of consulting and I wanted to do, so I did my first manufacturing restructuring textile company, 700 people, 3 factories, really, really deep and difficult restructuring. And that was so much fun. And I enjoyed myself tremendously. They never should have let me do that because I was way too young and way too inexperienced. But these are the small gifts that come from heaven occasionally. Then I basically got involved in investment funds. I'm a co-founder. I was a co-founder of Genesis Capital, which is now one of the largest venture capital funds. And actually, I'll be presenting 2 of my startups to them this week by chance. But I exited after the first fund, and then I was a partner in another investment fund that focused on mid-size Czech engineering companies. And in the meantime, I did a lot of corporate restructurings. And then I did a very large real estate restructuring project, which was 8 years long. And we grew the real estate portfolio value from 300 million euros to 1 billion euros. And after I exited from that, then I sort of came back to my first love, which was always startups. And what's really exciting about startups is that you have an idea and it takes a long time to really develop your MVP or minimum viable product and understand the market, etc. But then there's an inflection point where if you bring together the right ingredients, then it's sort of like making soup or making, pasta. It takes a long time to get it to boil, but then in 10 minutes, your food is ready. And it's sort of like, I love that moment just before it boils because there's so much excitement. There's so many things happening. And that's what I love. And that's why I like to be inside the pot. I like to be there. I like to experience it. And I have some very specific skills that I like to bring in that a lot of startups don't have. And that is specifically building international distribution networks. And the second skill set is I take a very deep technical view of individual products. And I'm sort of the long bridge between the actual end user and the design team. And I like to get involved in the core design of the product. And I look for opportunities where that exists. So that's my inspiration.
Great, thank you. And Marta also asked, how does one combine running your own business and being a business angel? So probably you know it by your own personal experience.
It's an interesting question, and it's I think you need to get there, because it's sort of like, again, those of you that have children will understand, but you run your own life, and yet at the same time you're growing this child, and it matures, and you need to give it independence. And even though you think that it's doing some things wrong, you keep your mouth shut. But when critical advice, you give critical advice, hopefully at the right time, and you don't get it right all the time. But it's sort of the same way in a startup, and I personally don't have a problem with this. It's like, Vita Dio, which is one of the companies that I've invested in. It's a diabetes platform to help type 2 diabetes patients manage their disease and potentially reverse the disease. And it's now going through certification in Germany. And the guys that are running it are very young. I think they're making a whole bunch of mistakes, but that's fine, But we meet every second week. We talk about stuff. We talk about strategy. And I think it's good. It's good for them. And I don't have a problem, not running their company. But my companies I run. I make the decisions. I'm not shy to make the decisions. And actually, it's useful because I can tell a lot of stories about my own companies that hopefully are helpful and inspirational for the startups.
Great, thank you very much, Petr. We have another question for you in chat that comes to the challenges that you had to overcome. What was one of your most memorable challenges, and how did you overcome the complexity? So I believe, yes, it's also related to the this turbulent startup environment.
I think the most difficult job you can do in terms of complexity is doing a business restructuring. The second most difficult job you can do is do a startup, right? And why restructuring is actually harder is because you have a company, 600, 2,000 people, and the whole company is failing. And it's typically like when your body fails, you know, the heart has problems, the kidneys are giving up, your spleen is not working, the oxygen is not getting through your lungs, and you have all these entrenched bad habits and problems, and at the same time you're breaking the bad things and you're building the new things, and it's extremely complex and challenging, and that's why I love it, the business restructuring part. And so my most complex or most complicated challenge actually was restructuring a printing equipment manufacturer. It was called Graphitech. I took over when sales had fallen 3 years in a row by 20% each year. Losses were 50% of sales. It had fallen to about 350 million crowns of turnover, and we had a production cycle of 9 months, and we had no cash. The banks froze all credit lines, and we had a new product that was failing because it was released too early, because the former managers basically felt panicked and they put the new product on the market. And it was extremely, and also they basically damaged a lot of distribution channel relationships because they said, we'll sell direct to the market. And we had distributors from Japan all the way through to Argentina. We had our own shop and service center in the US. And in 30 months, we turned that company around. I was really fortunate to have a great team that we partly put in place. And we grew sales from 350 million crowns to about 800 million crowns, entered a number of new markets, gained the #1 position in several markets, beating a German market leader. And we sold the company to the #3 leader, KBA, Kuning & Bauer, 30 months later. And in part because even though we didn't have any money, we invested about 4 million crowns in a major trade show. And I said, it's now or never. And that was the right moment. But the most challenging thing was we were literally a bankrupt company. Penta owned our competitor, Adas Adamov, and Penta were in the market trying to bankrupt us by buying receivables against us. And none of our suppliers sold Penta their receivables against us. And I had 9-month payment terms with these suppliers. So it was just like, it was so fragile. And but we made it. Obviously, not all my stories are good stories. I mean, they're all good stories, but they didn't always have a good ending, right? But this is definitely my most complex situation and funnest job that I've had yet. The reason we were successful, I think, is because we had a great team, total commitment, and I work on I call it the 3-6-12 principle. You got to have, in a restructuring especially, in 3 months, but I think this works for startups as well, vis-a-vis investors. In 3 months, you've got to have real results to show banks and especially employees. In 6 months, you've got to have another batch of real deliverables that they see progress. And then the next milestone is in 12 months. And if you can rebuild confidence of employees in their own company, then you've done 50% of the work that you need to do. And then we did a lot of research and design work in changing and improving the product. The product is made from 4,500 parts. It's like a little car. It sells for $1 million. It weighs 20 tons. So, and I love engineering. So that was sort of the second part of the success story. We put a lot of effort into really taking the new product but making it the way it should have been designed in the beginning.
Great, thank you very much. And we have in chat, thank you for sharing your experience. Yeah, thank you very much. Let me check in Slido. I can see one interesting question also here. What industry worth watching? I mean, it is related to startup, I believe. For
Again?
Investments. What industry? I mean, like what's is worth watching for startups?
Worth watching?
Yes, the industry.
You know, for me, it's so exciting because just when you think it's not possible to come up with anything new, you're surprised that there's something new. And I'd say, okay, so it's obvious, as they say, a rising tide lifts all ships. So if you're in a sector that is really sexy, blockchain, fintech, all this sort of stuff, maybe statistically you make more money. The sectors that I think are worth watching are healthcare. That's pretty obvious. And I don't really watch sectors as much as I watch the underlying business principle, right? And I don't like investments where it's what I call a winner takes all market. So a great example is fintech products. How many of you know GoPay? I mean, almost everyone knows GoPay, Plata Vibrana, it's the payment gateway. But I can say that there must have been at least 500 other GoPay lookalikes that failed. And they didn't, maybe some were lucky and they got consolidated, but the vast majority failed. There's only one Facebook, there's only one Google, there's only one, Airbnb, probably there's going to be only one Uber. So a market like this, those are the kind of investments I stay away from because I don't know how to hype, right? And a lot of these companies are successful and they hype and they get enough critical mass and they shoot up. I like companies, for example, new security systems, right? The market for home security or for security in general, huge. And there's room in the market for 100 successful companies. Diabetes platform, there's room in the market for 10 applications that help people with diabetes. One of my startups is in the construction industry, Moisture Guard. It's basically sensors that help prolong the longevity of your wooden housing and identifies problems with leakages and moisture in the very early stage. We're going to be successful even if there's 10 competitors. We're budgeting that we take 5% of the market. We're counting that there's another 19 competitors out there, and those are good numbers for us. So it's less about what sectors to watch than, for me, it's avoid a winner takes all high risk markets, although that's obviously where you make a lot of money, or you could make a lot of money, also lose a lot, and also play the sectors where you have knowledge, because you're always going to be more comfortable and make a better business judgment.
Thank you, great. And I guess we have time for a couple of more questions. If you have a question, feel free to put it into the chat. And what was your first startup you invested in?
Oh,
do you remember?
It depends. So I've been invested a short time. I mean, I've been in the startup area for really 3 years now. All right. So there's far more experienced people with great exit stories. Some people get lucky. Definitely luck plays a big role in investments. And those are typically the stories that you read about in all the sexy magazines like Forbes, etc. Some people work hard and they're successful, and they exit, and those are usually, it takes 7 years to do that. But depends how you define a startup. I'm pretty strict in terms of defining a startup as a company that has global potential and that can grow to a very significant size, $100 million in sales in a relatively short time, 3 years, 4 years, right? So my first startup was actually probably Vitadeo, the diabetes, but with my friends in the early days. So when I was doing financial consulting, then we were setting up small companies on the side, import companies, export companies, service companies, stupid stuff like dry cleaning companies. I mean, we were young and foolish and having a great time, So, but I don't really count those as startups. They didn't really have global potential.
Great, thank you. And I guess we have time for the last question for you. What is more important for you, a great team or a great idea?
Yeah, this is a very it's a great
Tricky
question, but a very common question. So there's people that will say, if you have a great idea, you can build a team. And people that will say, if you have a great team, they can turn any idea into success. So really, the winning combination is obviously you need both. You can't be successful without either. From my side, and I don't want this to sound arrogant, repeatedly I've had to build teams. So I feel very comfortable building teams, but at the same time, working in the restructuring context, working with startups, and seeing my ability to work with the team to generate ideas, I'm not really worried about the ideas either. I think probably what I would add to that is market, right? Where is really the market? And is it a market that you can access? And how are you going to access that market? Maybe last story, about 5 years ago, my wife lost her job. She was doing two jobs. And I told her, don't panic, don't take a job. I sent her to San Francisco for 2 months to learn English, step number one. And I said, I'll help you set up your own business. She said, no, I'm not a businessman. After 5 months of convincing, she finally said yes. And I said, and this is the point I want to make, you have the most important skill that every business needs as its number one priority. And that is the ability, and this is slightly cynical, so forgive me, the ability to take money from the customer's pocket and put it into the company's pocket, right? And she was able to do that because she understood about what it means to have a good product, and she understood what it means to convince the customer that this product adds a benefit to the way that they operate their lives, right? She's specifically in the animal health sector, and the second business she does is radiological protective wear for interventional surgery. And so what we did was we found international suppliers that were not yet here, and 12 months later she was in business, and today she runs her own small company. It's not going to make Forbes ever, but I have to say that she works maybe half time. It pays all the expenses in the family, her salary, and a couple holidays per year, and some savings, right? So it's really understanding how are you going to actually make money, and how are you going to convince the customer to take money from his pocket and put it into your pocket. And that is really, for me, the most important practical aspect.
Great, thank you very much. And thank you for a really inspiring session for today. I can see in the chat that people thank you very much.
Thank you.
It was very interesting, and I hope everyone liked it. And Petr, thank you. Everyone, thank you as well for joining. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and we are happy to see you all at our upcoming events. Please stay in touch. Feel free to contact me if you need any support, any advice, anything from the side of DAX Innovation Center. Happy to assist. And with this, I am closing the session for today.